Hello, everyone. It is 6:04, and I'm going to call the meeting to order of the Temporary Advisory Committee on District Discipline. My name is Robert Case. I'm the Vice Chair of the School Committee, and I'm one of the co-chairs of this committee, along with Dr. Santa, who's down at the other end. She's the other co-chair. And so first, does anybody need an agenda still? Pass that down. Anybody else? One? All right. So at this time, we'll ask, is there any public comment? I didn't see anyone signed up when I walked by, so I think we're good. Then we'll go on to the next. I just thought it might be nice to do a quick introduction of members, in particular for the students, but for all of us who may not know everyone. So if we just want to kind of quickly go around the room and just kind of say who you are and why you're here, kind of thing. So why don't we start here? We'll just go around that way.
My name's Alex. I joined because I think our school in many ways can change for the better, definitely.
What grade are you in?
I'm 11th grade.
Wonderful.
Hi, my name's Dylan, and I was interested because I think there's some wiggle room and freedom considering, our, lives in school, and I just like to talk about it and see what you guys have to say.
Excellent.
Hi, I'm Dr. Rachel Santa. I'm the Director of People Personnel Services, most commonly known as Special Education Services for the district.
Andrew Propetier, a teacher at North Kingston High School.
And again, I'm Robert Case, the Vice Chair of the School Committee.
I'm Joe Renzi. I'm the principal at Davisville Academy, and just wanted to kind of bring it my lens of what I see and things to help best practice.
Hi, I'm Kelly Ryan. I'm a parent. I'm also a licensed therapist, and I oversee violence prevention and substance prevention at the University of Rhode Island.
Hi, I'm Jen Lima. I'm on the school committee also.
I'm Sue Warburton. I'm a teacher at Quinnesset Elementary School.
I'm Carla Hodges. I'm a parent here, and my children are in elementary school at Forest Park, and I also teach high school in a different district.
Jacqueline Trokey, Assistant Principal for Teaching and Learning at the high school, and I'm here because I love to analyze the root cause of situations and think of better ways to systemically support all students.
I'm Harlan Benetti. I'm a 7th grade teacher at Davisville Middle School, and I'm also a parent of 2 NK students, and just want to be a part of this potential change for the district.
I'm Carolyn Johnston, principal at Quinnesset Elementary. I'm here because I'm pretty passionate about discipline and what it looks like, and how we can move forward to better support our students.
Hello everyone, my name's Alejandra Quire and I'm a freshman at North Kingston High School.
Hi, I'm Juliet Bays, and I joined because I just wanted to be a voice for my fellow students in a community where it matters.
Hi, I'm Lucia DeJesus. I am a junior at North Kingston High School. I was recommended to be here and I'm excited to be a part of it.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Next on the agenda, I thought it would be a good idea if we kind of discuss the purpose and the charge from the school committee, why the school committee wanted to put this committee together, and kind of what their hopes and goals for the committee are. So if you turn to the back page of your first page, right after the agenda, you'll see that this was the document that the school committee used to create the committee. And the second heading says the purpose and the charge. So for those of you that haven't had the opportunity to read it, the purpose of this temporary advisory committee is to review discipline data, solicit student input about the current disciplinary system, to review and propose revisions to discipline policies and practices from an equity lens, and advise the school committee on actions needed to improve the disproportionate data reported in the equity audit. And I'll read the goals and then we can have some discussion about it and see what people think. The goals of the temporary advisory committee are to solicit student input about the current disciplinary system throughout the district, draft and recommend a disciplinary matrix, examine current disciplinary policies and practices through an equity lens, and make recommendations for opportunities for improvement. Review current restorative discipline practices being utilized in K through 12 education and make recommendations for the district. Recommend equity-focused discipline training for district employees, and provide equity-focused professional discipline training for staff. So those are kind of the areas that we should look into as a committee to see what we might recommend to the school committee to kind of make district policy, I guess, at some point, would be the goal of this committee. So, should we have some discussion about that? Does anybody have any questions, or do they want to provide any feedback or anything? No?
Is there any data that can be shared to just start off the conversation?
Well, that's kind of what is later on in the agenda, kind of like, what do we need? What do we want to look at? Where does it need to come from? Who has the data? That kind of things like that, so.
So can I?
Yep.
So I'm the chair of the DES subcommittee, who is the group that commissioned the equity audit report for the district. If you all are not familiar with the equity audit, I would recommend, and I can have Rob send out a link reading it, especially the sections on discipline. One of the priority findings was that we have some really disproportionate discipline in our schools. It's being distributed, like kids are being disciplined inequitably, kids are being disciplined without any real sense of policy or procedure, and there was a lot of feedback from people who took part in the equity audit about just the perception that discipline is not meted out impartially. And the actual statistics from the data that was reviewed by the consulting company showed huge disparities in discipline statistics between our Black students, our students with IEP, our students who were free and reduced lunch. Like, there are definite disparities which show that certain groups of students are being disciplined either more frequently or more harshly than others. And that was why the school committee decided that we needed to create this temporary committee, because it's too big of a task just to, it's too important of a task to ignore, but it's too big to handle on its own. So our hope is that the purpose of this committee will be to, you know, trying to figure out like what is causing that, what systems can be put in place to prevent it, and from a student standpoint, like, what do you all think works best, because you're the expert obviously in your lives. So there is a lot of data that was available in the equity audit that can be reviewed. There's a summary of it here in the appendix, but I would definitely recommend that everybody who's on this committee read the whole audit. It's like 90-something pages, so if you don't want to read that, just read the part that relates to discipline.
And like Jen said, I can send out, Dr. Stanton, I can send out a link to everybody. It's on the school's the district's website, but we can just send it out to make it easier so you can go straight to it.
And the data that was reviewed by the consultant company was individual student discipline records, confidentially redacted so that nobody knew who was what, but they reviewed the actual discipline incidents reported to RIDE and reported by the school, and they went through all of them, and that's where they came up with the results for the survey.
And along with asking for students to participate and everything, that's kind of how the makeup of this committee was formed. You know, we wanted parents involved, we wanted teachers, we wanted administrators, we wanted just a wide kind of swath, which kind of, I guess, leads us to the next item on the agenda a little bit, but it's input on resources that we think we might need, or do we think we have the expertise, like the voices that we need on this committee? Do we think we need more? Do we think there's somebody in particular that could provide us with, you know, either their experience or their expertise in the schools that would be beneficial for us to invite to be either a part of the committee or at least come and speak to the committee? I know this is hard because this is the first meeting, so it's introductory.
I can add, and I don't want to speak for them, but I do think hearing from our deans at the high school as well as our assistant principal of student services, Mr. Anderson, the three of them obviously work kind of specifically in this area and might be able to speak to any questions or clarifications we may have. I don't know that they'd be able to join the committee, but I'm sure that they could give us, they're very good and consistent with what they do at the high school, and I think that that would be a great place to start.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent. Anyone else? Suggestions?
It's important to bring mental health staff into the committee. I don't know if they're available to join, but they're on the front lines often, and have a voice and a lens, I think, that can help us navigate this.
Okay. And again, if they can't join the committee, then we can invite them to speak to us.
Yeah.
Definitely,
Just
absolutely.
like two, yeah.
Right, right. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, it's fine. I wonder if there are other middle schools or high schools or districts in the state that have, like a proven track record with, you know, like a discipline record that accurately represents, a discipline record that represents the student population, maybe more fairly or balanced. I was thinking Paul Cuffey, middle school, high school. Maybe more.
Anyone else?
I guess as a parent lens, wondering what are the current practices, I think, within each school, and is there like an overarching vision or statement that kind of brings them all together, or are they all functioning as individual standalone places? I think would be interesting to know.
Anyone else?
I'm sorry, I missed that last
Yep.
comment. I apologize.
You wanna
Oh,
restate?
just wondering if there is, if all the schools kind of function individually when looking at discipline procedures, or if there's an overarching policy or vision statement that kind of guides the practices of all the different schools within the district.
Thank you. I just want to make sure I got it right.
Any other resources? Financial resources? Is there any need for any financial resources? Maybe not to begin with.
Not yet, I don't think.
I don't think so. Maybe down the road.
Meaning if we come up with an idea for training, then that would.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's something like that, you know, either the school committee can find the money for and add to the budget, or somehow, you know, come up with something that we could, you know, put forth. Those are definitely things that we can talk about.
I expand upon that. That's something that we kind of already are doing at the high school, where if a student has an infraction, dependent on the infraction, they may have a choice between some kind of training to support, you know, remediation of whatever it was, or the actual discipline referral, and we kind of leave it up to the student and the family. So I wonder if we can maybe expand on those options.
I think he
Like
means
substance
for
ab-
teaching.
Oh,
Well, it
teacher
could
training.
also be
Oh, okay.
professional development for staff
Yeah,
as well.
Yeah, that, like.
That's interesting.
Like substance abuse training
Yep.
and supports, as opposed to the, for example, as opposed to a suspension.
Mhm.
All of our students always have that option, so I wonder if we can expand on the things that we could offer to kids too, potentially.
Yeah, and just to maybe jump off that idea, thinking like, what systems do we have in place for the district to support students with, making good decisions and like teaching them how to behave in certain situations? And, you know, like, so it's not all reactive,
Okay.
like the PBIS models.
Anyone else?
So just I just wanna highlight some of the qualitative comments from the survey,
Oh.
not just number, cause I think these are really the reason why we are here. These are some of the feedback that were provided to us directly from students who took the survey. Students and teachers, and parents. Bias-based bullying is unaddressed. Many students and families perceive inconsistent, biased implementation of student discipline. Students express hesitation in reporting incidents due to concerns of embarrassment or inaction. Staff have not received comprehensive anti-bias discipline training, and disciplinary action warranted by violations of the bullying policy are not clear. But there was a note that there was definitely openness within all the various stakeholders who were, talked to revise the current policies and practices. So I think that's really kind of, in addition to the numbers, there are real people behind each of these statements.
Yeah, I'd like to bounce off that. I've seen a lot of my friends have bias-based bullying happen to them, and it not be addressed in a way that they feel is necessary. And so I feel like that should be a big focus.
Thank you.
I also wonder too, what's the current required training for all students? At the beginning of the year, what is done annually, what is done when they enter the high school? But is there like a certain proactive curriculum that is done that kind of lays out expected behavior within the community, and kind of what would happen if, they weren't able to follow it? But more importantly so is looking at, I think building upon what you had said down there, was what are we doing to help students understand what is acceptable behavior and what is expected within the community, and knowing that everyone's kind of coming, I think, from the same overall arching belief system, I think is huge.
Going along with that, what kind of bias-based training, if any, or, bullying information is given to staff at different levels, or what training has happened?
Excellent. Any other thoughts?
One of the things I noticed, I've been in the high school since 2003, was sometimes systemic change, like the data kind of gets a little gaslit by the overall arching, and sometimes solutions are counterintuitive, like maybe some of the low-level discipline techniques are not being utilized properly, so then the big suspensions do occur with the minority population. And the other issue I've seen, like recently, like 10 years ago in our district, we pushed for this privacy agreement, and really took a lot of transparency and information out of the teachers' hands. Like, they would have no idea what was going on, and that leads to issues. Like, we don't even need to know the details, but for discipline and safety, we need to know the context of situations, a student's trigger, students' histories and stuff like that, and we weren't, all that information was taken away from us. So a lot of times teachers have no idea, so they might be giving a biased reaction, and they don't even know it because they have no context and degree of the situation.
That's making me think of if there's ever a situation where there's two students who have their hands on one another, and is there a follow-up that happens where the two, they might have the ISS, the in-school suspension, but then do they have a restorative or an opportunity to sit face to face and hash it out in a supported way, so they can then feel good in the hallways together? I'm sure that's simply.
I don't know if we want that to linger, if you want me to answer it
Would you
directly. I could give what I know about it. What I do know is it depends on what both parties and their families agree to. Sometimes there's situations where they have a no contact kind of in the school agreement, but in all cases we offer that remediation, and we do lean into that, because at least I on speaking for the team, and I don't wanna necessarily put words in everybody's mouth, but our goal is to remediate and make it, everybody feel comfortable, but in those extreme cases, we can't force it.
Sure.
But I do think that it's definitely worth looking into, like, how do we lean further into those remediative conversations?
And what does it look like at the elementary level?
Right.
What does it look like at the high school level?
Yeah, that's the high school, I
I
don't
was
know.
gonna say that's the ultimate goal, but it's the same thing at the elementary, level. We'll often do a safety plan, but, the parents and student have to be willing, right? It's only gonna be work if they're gonna be willing, and I recently just had a parent, like, we talked about possibly, it was a significant issue, but we talked about possibly, going in another classroom, but she was like, no, my daughter needs to learn to respect and be kind even though you're not friends. So, the voice of the parent is critical in how you move forward, but the ultimate goal is to be able to respect and, I think that should be K through 12, you walk away from something learning.
As a high school student, I think that, like, hashing it out, seeing how we can find a way for that to happen maybe more frequently, because we are growing into being adults, like, we're gonna go out into the real world, and sometimes, like, restraining orders are not always gonna be, like, the first option, maybe learning how to be mature and talk it out. I think that should definitely be a more, used option.
Yeah.
I also know of a principal in Philadelphia who spoke about at Providence College about like examining the parental paradigm, like maybe have meetings on weekends if somebody works like a 9 to 5 job that is in a factory, that they don't have free time to get to meetings, and then making sure if somebody is a second language, they have somebody there who can translate, and then give a lot more power to parents, because they spoke about how like parents will get in a meeting and they'll just be told options, they won't have like a say in the design of them and stuff like that. So just make a focus to like not assume a parent doesn't care, but assume, like, give them the opportunities and the support system to be a part of it. Like, make sure, you have people there who can translate, and make sure you have like meeting times and that are more open-ended than we currently have a lot of times.
I want to bounce off of that as well. My mom is Hispanic. English is her second language, and my brother, he does have like some issues at the middle school, and like for all the meetings, she's also a full-time working mom, so she can't always make them all the time, and then like I can't make them sometimes because I have work. So I do agree, like, having a translator and like making schedules more flexible for parents for those meetings so they can help their child.
And even sometimes she talked about providing transportation, like a shuttle, and stuff like that. So like to make it easier and to not assume, someone. And then the biggest thing was when a working class family takes the time out of work, they really need to feel like it accomplished something. Like they weren't just there being told things. They got to like have a say in the matter and everything. So she cited that when she instituted that program in her Philadelphia high school, that a lot of increases happened because she herself was from an immigrant-based family. She said how important education was to her parents, but they didn't speak English, and that's why she made a big push when she was the principal to institute that policy.
And do you know the principal's name?
No, I'd have to look it up. I did. It was a guest speak like 8 years ago at Providence College. She came and spoke to everybody in the administration degree.
Okay. Because we could always reach out and ask for, material support, or, some kind of meeting with her, whether, whatever that might be. So that's definitely something we can look into. Anyone else?
I have one more thought. When I hear the word discipline, sometimes it's like behavior management, and discipline just seems like it's the reactive. I think we kind of already touched on this with the pro-social behaviors that we want kids to demonstrate. But like, is it a separate category? I think like the social emotional learning, the social worker and the guidance counselor, and then the discipline, like sometimes it's very compartmentalized when it is something that just could be encompassing work. Like the work we do that's to discipline a student, and the work we do to support the appropriate behaviors or to
teach them.
Anyone else?
Is there any practices within the district currently on like trauma-informed care or understanding the impacts? Basically for teachers or principals or social workers is understanding how trauma or, you know, adverse childhood experiences may be impacting students' behavior within the room and kind of how to mitigate those things.
I can speak to that one. Yes, they've had extensive training.
Mhm.
All of our mental health folks have had advanced training.
Mhm.
They've done SOS training, they've done advanced suicide training, and many of our schools have additional trauma-informed training. Yeah. Do I think every person? No, but there are groups of people that have had tremendous amount in understanding the impact.
So all the teachers have had specific trauma-informed
No,
training?
I didn't say all the teachers,
Okay.
I'm saying there's large groups. I haven't been here long enough to tell you if all the
Okay.
teachers have received it in the past, but I can tell you all the mental health had an update just this year on these practices.
So I would say there's pockets.
Pockets, yeah.
You know, this is going on my 6 years, and even, you know, the limited time that I have with staff, everything is typically about SEL in and around. I mean, we're doing conscious discipline, which has a trauma-informed approach, but also the revolving of teachers as you try to build up to have that, because I've also gone to training where it's trauma-informed, and there's a lot of ahas. So we do a lot of sharing knowledge within the building of who has the expertise and who's just coming on board. But I don't think it's a one and done, and that's why it needs to continue, because I think, you know, we all get emotional and when we're humans, right? So adults get emotional in trying to navigate a child's behavior, but like if you can take yourself out of it, and that's why, you know, staff and to make the decision, you know, not to make a decision on an emotional level, but that is an ongoing professional development and discussion and culture that you attempt to build in your school. And yes, training is needed, but it needs to
Continue.
It needs to be the culture
Right.
everywhere.
Right.
Yeah.
So what I would say about this, and people who may not know, is I was the director here from 2008 to 2012, and I just returned in August. So I have a past and a current kind of lens for the district. And prior to that, I ran an ALP program here at North Kingstown High School for students whose behavior was not conducive to school sometimes. And what I see is a lack of a systemic PBIS system, very similar to what you're saying. Because I think when you have that system in place, then that starts to foster the training regarding trauma-informed practices. It allows you to create more creative ways of helping a student relearn a skill. It helps us to look at what's lagging for the student, what skill they're lagging, or what is something that they need that we haven't been able to identify. Because when you look at the base of behavior, typically that's what we're looking for. There's a lagging skill or something that they need that we just haven't identified yet. So that's what I see as a system that we really need to work on. I think that would go a long way to incorporate many of the things that you folks are talking
Even
about.
the restorative approach, I think the middle schools were doing it. Elementary, I mean, I've been trained in it, my psychologist has been trained in it. And mine was years and years ago, but like all of it, it's intertwined, but even that approach, when you were talking already for the high school, I'm like, yeah, okay, training, nope, have the high school kid do a presentation and come present to a third grader about, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's the restorative piece, they have to do it, be accountable and bring the training back. I'm like, all right, we can like start to like, at the end of this, make banks of solutions that can grow the the supports.
Anybody else?
I was just thinking from the point of view of data, I know I haven't reviewed it, but we're looking at the suspensions or whatever, I wanna look at the causes more, because I think if we, you know, is there, when I say training, and I was thinking of professional development, if we could think of how do we train ourselves better in that situation, does it get to that level, to the next level, to the next level, to the next level, if we know what's causing it and how to deal with it better before it even starts. So, that's where I go, how do I avoid in that situation to begin with, and now I don't have any discipline to deal with.
Right.
And to add on to that, like for teachers to have a system where we can document perhaps, I don't know if this is too vague, but suspected reason for behavior, like was she just trying to have fun when she threw the pen at Janie or something, like was she just trying to have fun, was she impulsive,
Avoid
was
or
she
obtain.
angry? What's that?
Avoid or obtain. That's usually what they're trying to do. Avoid
Yeah.
attention, avoid the work.
Like,
Obtain attention, obtain getting out of here. I mean,
So a way to document that when, or like the instance when documenting it, instead of just, you know, I think the options are insubordination and disrespect, but there's, you know, even as a non-trained,
sorry, I'm laughing because I said,
you know,
Joe and I were talking about this earlier.
we just had a training for we just finished for my building, we finished up and we start some other ones. I said if I would be, I never felt disrespected by students, I would just remove that from the option of the drop down to pick on it. They're never disrespectful, no matter what they're doing. If you take that out of your thinking, maybe that changes your approach on how you're handling it, how it changes how we escalate, how it changes how we get to the suspension. So I'm just saying, I've been working with the at-risk behavior kids for 17 years and never felt disrespected by a kid, so.
And I've never written a kid up my entire school career, and I'm on the year 33, and I've never felt like it was being insubordinate. They just didn't do what I asked them to do in the
So
moment.
I'm hearing training,
In the
professional
moment.
development,
Yeah.
you know, I mean,
Right?
it's,
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of training that needs to be occur of our whole system of how things are written up. I'm looking at Joe, because we've
but yeah,
read
a drop
through a
down
lot of these.
comes from RIDE, right? And so this is where you're
well,
sort
that's
of,
Aspen, isn't it?
yes, so it has
The
to,
Aspen's from Rye.
Aspen's right.
yeah, so the coding has to be
No, the
aligned.
coding is from RIDE.
Yeah.
Aspen is our own system.
Aspen's our system that talks to RIDE, but what goes in Aspen has to align with RIDE's coding.
Yeah, but there's other ways, not to push back a little bit, everything's going into Aspen. I'm not used to systems where everything goes into Aspen, there's other
I
ways
wasn't either.
to talk about behavior that doesn't have to go into some type of electronic system. And that only really extreme conduct, in my opinion, should be reported in that manner.
I think that's probably a much larger conversation with the ministry.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like we talked about that every year since we've been here, because where I came from, we did not document, especially at the elementary school, because everything was learning and, you know, we'd have plans and stuff, unless it was, you know, something, you know, really unsafe.
Significant.
Actually,
Significant.
unsafe,
Yep.
Yeah.
you know, so it's, that, I think is another conversation of, so we can be consistent on what's documented.
And I definitely think that we can have that conversation, you know, we can put it on the next agenda maybe and meet that out a little bit more and discuss that in a little more fuller manner. Yep.
Yeah, I just wanted to bounce off what he said and what you guys were saying. It just seems like the drop-down menu, and specifically, it like puts a lot of blame on the student, like they were acting disrespectful because they wanted to do this thing. And that automatically puts one in a mindset of blaming the student when it could have just been circumstance, or it could have been something else, and that puts you in the mind of like maybe like having bias that like the kid did something wrong, like, and they technically did, like, it's because it's not something good, but it just, the negativity, like, inherently, when there's other context that could be added, like you said, adding like what your thoughts on it were, I think it should be part of the discipline.
The other problem we always have too, and it always drives me crazy, is a kind of tabula rasa with like situations, and then like they're always talking about it like it's the first instance, and then it graduates up to like a huge discipline moment. Like it doesn't seem to be like problem solving as it goes. So like a student will be late, and then they're late, and then they don't show up for office detention, and then it turns into like the office detention gets quadrupled, and then all of a sudden they have a certain number of office detentions. Now it's a suspension, when it was a really simple behavior that the student probably, if they had gotten help, would have stopped doing. But we kind of like let them keep doing it, and then all of a sudden we put this big punishment down them, which is very like unfair, because you're sitting there like, you kind of modeled that it was okay for 2 months, and now all of a sudden you're suspending them for that. I mean, it's not fair to them, you know, because that's always a problem I had, is like, and then like you were talking about, when you get out into the job community, if you can't basically come in on time and not always be contrary when they talk to you, like, like, how are we helping you? And then just throwing a big discipline action at you doesn't help you either, cause it's almost like you haven't even identified the behavior that was wrong, and then for the student, they just get so upset, cause all they're thinking is, you let me be late and be in the hallway like every day for like 2 months straight, and now I'm suspended, like, what's your problem? So,
Now you're
that's
really
my-
gonna be late,
Yeah.
cause you're not there at all.
yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Can I add something to one of the previous things? And I don't know if maybe I'm just not as familiar with this platform in Aspen, because frankly, I don't do the formal discipline at my school. But we used to use Skyward in my previous district, and we had a drop-down menu of I think it was up to 50 different explanations as to kind of what, like, it wasn't just insubordination or disrespect, it was a really wide list. And then there was also an option to check off why we thought it occurred. So were they seeking attention? Were they acting out? Were they avoiding an adult? Were they avoiding other students? Like, there was a lot more of those nuances that we could grab to not have maybe an immediate assumption about what it was. And then in Skyward, that would kind of disaggregate the data by like what's most extreme for Ride to look at and whatnot. I don't know if Aspen does that extensive of, you know, breaking it down, but I do know that other platforms have, so I don't know if it's something we could look into to have more information when it comes through. And then I covered at,
I feel like, and maybe, I think when you want to figure out a root cause, you need to have a thoughtful conversation, and the teacher filling out the Aspen referral at that moment might not be the best one to be put in the root cause.
it was actually, sorry,
You know
if
what I'm saying?
if I misspoke,
Oh,
the
right.
administrator responded with that.
Okay.
The depth of information.
All
So I
right.
think that there was definitely more information that they could put in at the original
Okay.
screen, but then the nuances happened, I believe, after that.
Yeah, because you had in the previous district, I'm aware of what you did was,
Yeah.
you had a very PBIS, MTSS model. That's a multi-tiered support system where you sit down and you problem solve the issue. So this kiddo that's missing school a lot comes up as, ooh, look at the data, there's a kid missing school a lot, let's sit down and with the student and try to figure out what's going on, you know, versus we send a letter home, truancy, all those other things that kind of happen. I think we need less ways to document and more ways to discuss
Yeah.
and help problem solve, to be honest. Although I understand you're saying that
Yeah,
wasn't
yeah,
an
yeah.
attack on you, Jackie. I just think there's way too much
Yeah.
concentration on let's get this written down versus how do we help to problem solve it. And then I'll say something, I also think that we need to relook at the disruptive student clause in the union contract, because that's being occasionally used, I think, not the way the clause was actually intended. The clause was intended that if a student is being very disruptive, that there should be some problem solving going on, but it's being interpreted by some of our teachers as they need to be gone out of my classroom.
Well, the good news is we already negotiated that and changed it.
Perfect, okay,
'Cause
great.
the disruptive student is like, actually one of my points was, we really need to look at discipline twofold, like, is it a safety issue? Or is it just like a teacher who's like upset that someone's being rude? Because, like, I personally have been trained that I don't mind that, like, it doesn't bother me at all. I only have a problem with a safety issue, like, the reason why I write up a student for cutting my class isn't because I'm offended or upset about them academically, is because I know I'm legally responsible for them, and if something bad, God forbid, happens, I need to know where they are. So, and that's like the student who is in my class and refuses to follow commands, like, that's not anywhere appropriate school safety, because if we have a lockdown, I mean, there's 27 other kids in that classroom, and they see a student who's ignoring the teacher's clear protocols, and we're not talking about like, oh, they refuse to open their book and do the homework. I'm not talking about that. I'm like, you're like, okay, get over in the corner, you gotta be quiet, and they think it's a good time to throw open the door and scream down the hallway, we're here, and you're just like, as a teacher, what do? And then you have 27 students who are traumatized by that. So if a student, like, that's why, like, discipline is kind of like a archaic notion. It's like, it's gotta be focused. Is it a safety issue? Because that's why the teachers wanted the disruptive student clauses, because, you know, they're responsible for all that student, and we have to worry about the other 27 students in addition to the one. And then it ties in with that whole, like, school safety, school, you know, people, communicating and having conversations and having context and degree about a situation, all that hasn't been occurring because it's like we've just been writing conduct referrals and there's no context and degree of that we don't have the student side. We have, and then we have like, you know, people talking and having conversations without other people around and no parents there to give their take on it and what they see at home. It's just like this one-sided, very litigious bent where, like I always love to say, if you're very black and white, you're gonna end up emotionally black and blue. So that's what I always say all the time, like every day. My poor student has
She's
to
like,
have
yes.
a flashback.
She's like confirmed.
She has to have a flashback of that. She hears it, what, once a day, every day, so.
No, but I definitely think those are areas that we can look into, that we can come up with assignments and projects for people to kind of look at and report back to the subcommittee, you know, to say, you know, there are these different types of systems that other districts use, and here, you know, and do some research into it and bring it back to us. And that's kind of what I hope this subcommittee will do and become, so we can kind of take all that information, put it into some action points and some recommendations for the school committee, so then when we go back, we can say, you know, here's some policies you should consider, here's some discipline styles that need to be changed, and I think looking at other systems, like you said, what are their drop-down menus? Is that something we can adapt? Is that something that maybe we don't need to adapt, but maybe we can use it in a different way to see the different types of how
Or maybe
they.
we can agree to the few that might fit in the box instead of like the,
Right,
like how do we all know what, you know,
That's
there's
the thing.
insubordination and there's disrespect, you know, and defining all that. But I'm looking at you and Jill because you're doing the safety care training, you know, I feel like that's the beginning of us kind of coming together again because so much, I'll see you Tuesday, not trained, but you know, so I'm hearing so much of it is about the beforehand, so you never get to that part, and it sounds like really aligned to PBIS and that mindset.
It
But
is.
like maybe there's a way when we think about professional development, using all of that language to build it out for.
So what we like about, the district is moving, for those who don't know, we're moving away from Crisis Prevention Institute CPI de-escalation training to safety care de-escalation training. And it's a minimum 12-hour training. 9 of those hours is de-escalation. It's not about physical management, although if you have to get to that point when there's imminent risk to the student or those around them, then we'll get there. But I think that the tenets that seem to be people are really responding to is, one, we're defining behavior through the safety care system as, is this disruptive, is this dangerous, or is this very dangerous? So we really talk about those 3 different levels type of behavior, and the majority of what we see kids get in trouble for is what, Joe? Disruptive. It is not, it's not dangerous and it's not very dangerous, to go on the point, Andrew, of your safety concern. It's really looking at what is safety. The other thing that we're doing was some work with a consulting neuropsychologist, is talking about the fact that you have to have safety, regulation, behavior before you can get to the academics. And like this kind of SEL lasagna is what I think of it as. You have to have all those layers before we even can get to how our kids functioning academically.
I was just gonna say, if we're really keeping our eye on the ball with like what the purpose of school is and what managing, I guess, the behaviors in the classroom, you know, it's about learning, it's about, and if I'm looking at this data, I mean, everybody who's in the schools needs to feel like they have a sense of belonging. Like you can't get someone in your classroom to buy in and I mean, we keep talking about it, like just behave, I guess, without them caring about it. So like, if they don't feel like they have a sense of belonging, their identity is accepted, and who they are in the classroom matters, then it's like, so if they skip class, you know, what is so important about you skipping class? Well, I needed you here today, I needed your voice, I needed, you know, like, it's when you skip class, you're not here for your group, you're not here for, you know, yourself, obviously, and your learning and so on. Like, that's, to me, the most base level to start with getting to those low level things. Because I'm sure, I mean, we're talking about suspending and so on, but I'm sure, like, classroom tardies and that's happening a lot more and that kind of stuff. So to me, like, it's so important that we remember that, you know, as we're talking about this, like, you know, it's about everyone feeling like safe, but safe to learn. So you get to that point, you get to that level of, I'm ready to be pushed, I'm ready to be challenged, I'm ready to work you know, and, you know, work with my classmates and let them learn.
I think another issue too is, that ties into that, is we also have to examine the academic side of things, like
Yeah.
what what experiences are students getting, cause I'm thinking about, like, 11 years ago, we had Spirit Day, and, our school colors are black and gold, and a bunch of seniors were like using paint to do black and gold, and one student thought, like, I'll just put black on one side of my face and gold on the other side, and I was like, please go and put NK symbols or something on your face, please just don't have black on your face. And they looked at me and they had no idea, and like, did we have discussions, did we read nice experiences by, you know, authors who happen to be black, like how did we help them academically? And concurrently, sometimes our academics are so focused on test scores and education, but we're not focused on learning. So then, like, a student won't have buy-in to like come to class, because all they're doing is kind of busy work. So they're like, why can't I like go to the bathroom and take 3 laps? When I come back, the teacher will still be doing busy work, you know. So that ties into it too, because if they don't think they're learning anything or getting any skills, like if they can skip class and still be not confused, that says something bad, you know, like, so.
I completely agree with that.
Yeah.
Like, I don't have anything else to say, that's like, exactly, you too, like what you said. That's exactly what needs to happen.
I have something to say on more of like the problem solving, like diffusing part. I've done multiple rounds of DBT, which is dialectical behavior therapy. I think being in 11th grade, almost 12th, and having experiences with teachers all throughout, I think them being on the same page about how to kind of talk to students in like a good, safe way without the student feeling like they're being like talked to like a child. Because I think I've heard of many instances where like people will have like a confrontation with a teacher, and the teacher will just go like you're kid, like you have no opinion, you're not right, like I'm an adult, I have had this many years in like the system, like I know. And it's like not always that like straight line thinking.
So I will also say part of some of the training, it doesn't address all what you're saying, but when we talk about de-escalation, it starts with how can I help you and what do you need?
Yeah.
Right? It doesn't start with what did you do, what's wrong with you, how could you? It starts with really open, how can we help you, what do you need? That's the first step of de-escalation that we are teaching right now. So far we've had, I think, about 57 people trained, and we're doing another 40 next week.
2 rounds.
Yeah, but it's 40 altogether.
Yeah.
Yeah, 2 groups of 20. So, and then we look at, maybe we need to give you a more directed prompt because you're not kind of being able to pull yourself together. Before, we would just kind of wait you out. And I think sometimes what happens is adults get very much, including myself, when you get emotional, you get kind of like in this back and forth with the student or with your own kid. Usually it's my own kid, to be honest. That you don't, that you're not really thinking about the other perspective, or you're not kind of checking yourself to make sure that you're being in the most kind and active listening way you possibly can. So those are good points.
Yeah, in those situations, like definitely, like instructing both sides of the like confrontation to take a step back and either go see like the psychologist, social worker, guidance counselor, to think about what they're saying, their actions, and like how it could affect the other person.
The only thing that touches with that I always see as a need, and it's like a budget issue, is I would really wish like school counselors and student support personnel could come to the students sometimes, because it seems like a lot of times with like green passes and a student has a need, they have to like self-soothe, they have to like diagnose it, make their green pass, and then go to the correct professional, and then they kind of get rewarded by leaving class, and then they play the telephone game with the support personnel, because now they're a very emotional person in a bad spot, and they have to sum up what their trigger was, what it was going on, and in a perfect world, it'd be cool if like the support personnel were like in the room with the teacher, and then they could also observe the teacher being inappropriate and like talk to the teacher, be like, hey, you know, you might not have known this, but your body language was pretty antagonistic, and right now we play like the telephone game with everything, like everybody's always walking around like, what do you think, or what do you think, and then they go talk to each other instead of just observing. And you know, in a perfect world, it'd be like the support personnel would be like kind of on every floor in the high school instead of one area, and then like you could like call them and they could come up, and like, and maybe a student could be like, hey man, I need you in the room, can you just come and sit with me in the room a couple days, because I keep getting, you know, triggered by Mr. Profiteer and I need some help, and I don't know if I'm the right one to identify it. Maybe I'm doing something wrong, maybe he's doing something wrong, let's have a conversation. So in a perfect world, like we'd stop playing the telephone game, and we'd stop sending students to places, we'd maybe come to them to keep them in the room maybe.
That's a good idea.
I agree with Mr. Prob. I've experienced a ton of conflicts reaching either guidance or even just the nurse. You know, you have to make a smart pass to even access those areas, and they will not accept you into those areas without one. So just to reach them, you would have to go all the way back to the class that you're at and fill out a form, which is a tedious process. And like Mr. Prob said, if you're in a emotional state, or you know, even a unhealthy state, if you're going to the nurse, like filling out a pass and then walking all the way back to that area is not totally efficient all the time, and it's kind of a conflict for me and a lot of other students that I've talked to.
I can speak to that personally. It actually happened to me like I think 2 weeks ago. It was passing time and I went to use the bathroom, and I was triggered by something that was written on the bathroom stall about me. And I ended up like breaking down, which I couldn't help it. I was triggered really badly, and I immediately went downstairs to reach my guidance, but she was in a meeting with another student. So I just said like, it's fine, I'll come back, but I didn't end up coming back. I just broke down in the stairwell. My friend stayed with me, and we skipped class that period, and then I tried reaching my counselor one more time, but she was with the student, so I kind of just skipped class, and I was just in the stairwell like crying for the whole period over that small incident. But I just needed to talk to someone, and I couldn't reach her.
Yeah, and then I've seen really bad situations in the high school where a student is counseling and helping another student. Like I'll literally, and I just question that, because they'll be like, oh, I'm like, are you okay? Can we take you to the guidance counselor? And then they'll be like, no. And I'll be like, nope, let's go. And then they're not happy about me taking them to the school counselor area. And then the other friend's like, but I got it. I'm like, you're 16, you don't have it. Like, let's get you some help. And then like you said, then another teacher might walk by and be like, why do you have your cell phone up? And you're like, I did not need that right now. I needed like nobody to ask me about that. And so, you know, it's like nuanced like that. It's like, I don't know the answer, but I do know it seems like we need more innovation. Maybe always have one support personnel offline, or to help out, or wander the halls, like to be there for people, something like that. Like shift up some of the paradigms of like, this is your room, you go them, and you know, like
I encourage everyone, you know, if you look and see what other schools are doing, look at other programs that they use, other ideas that they have. I don't think we necessarily have to reinvent the wheel either. I think we can see what are the best practices that other schools are using, and how are they doing this effectively in a, you know, a fair and even-keeled approach to discipline. I think that there's a lot we can learn from these. So I encourage you to, you know, if you want to spend 5 minutes, or I know sometimes I can get on a subject and I can go down a rabbit hole and then come with, you know, feel free to send it to me, to Dr. Santa. We'll get it on an agenda, and we can, you know, really have some like full discussions about these things. But these are all great ideas of things that we should look into, areas we should research into, ideas of, you know, different even programs that we can look into as far as, and I think we can learn from all of it. And you know, thank you to the students for giving us kind of your firsthand, you know, experience of what you're seeing, not only for yourselves, but your fellow students. I think that, you know, when Dr. Duva told me that students were going to be involved, I was very, very happy and pleased to see so many students that wanted to be a part of this. So that's definitely, you know, important. But yeah, feel free to always reach. I think everyone should have Dr. Santa's email. If you
Just put
don't,
in Santa, I'll pop up.
yeah, type in case
Spelled the way you think.
CASC. My email will pop up.
Santa.
My school committee email address will pop up, and then you can feel free to contact either one of us, and we'll get it on an agenda for a future meeting.
I'd just like to add, if we think about training the teachers and you talk about the trauma-informed, I think we go right to the practices of how to interact. But, you know, and this is one thing Conscious Discipline has done for the building, and, you know, when you go to more extensive training, they start looking at the brain and what your brain is actually doing when you're triggered, right? Because in that moment, you know, you're not functioning, and as young as kindergarten,
It
we
lights
talk
up
about our
differently.
brains, our
Yeah.
red brain,
Yep.
blue brain, or a green brain, and no matter, you know, something happens on the recess, what brain state do you think that you were in? Very simple and concrete in kindergarten, but think about, I mean, I love the brain, so I don't know if I just, the amount of how much high school kids could absorb that knowledge so they can self-regulate, I think would be critical and powerful, you know, just kind of build on what our brain is something.
And I wanted to add
It's so
something too.
interesting.
As I'm hearing things, especially from our students, I agree with everything that you guys are saying, where there's like situations that there's complications that seem to be getting in the way, and we need to relook at that. And also, it sounds to me like there needs some of, at least at the high school, our processes better explained, because there are some systems, like for example, in a Smart Pass situation, teachers can write one on your behalf, so you can just leave, you know, but maybe they don't all know that, or they're not as practiced with it, or, you know, there are a lineup of people that you could have seen, like, instead of, unless you didn't feel comfortable with it, that's a whole different story. But I'm wondering how much our student body and our teachers know, like, here's what we typically do, but in a certain case, like, here's an outline of other things, so that there's no moment where you're sitting in a hallway alone and you don't have anybody else to lean on, or you're in an emergency situation and feeling like you don't have the time to write the pass. Like, I feel like somewhere in between expanding what we can do and then also clearly communicating it with everybody is so important.
It's almost like a cross-reference type of thing where
Right.
if the psychologist or the mental health
Yeah,
professional is
then
not
do
available,
this.
then, you know, go to this person
Like a
and
flow
then.
chart.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. You know, who's available, and to also let staff know what that flow chart is, for lack of a better term right now.
Mhm.
You know, let them know what that matrix is, or flow chart, and to say, you know, if you see this with a student, here's like what your next step is.
Yeah.
You know, and here's how to approach it, and, you know, this person A may be booked for the next 3 hours. Here's how you can help, you know, in the meantime, and evaluate the situation.
I think the tricky piece is just the sheer volume.
Yeah.
I also think that when you're already in an escalated state, you're not thinking. So when you're triggered, you're not using your problem solving skills at the time. You're not gonna look at a flow chart and go, okay, this person who's my normal
Right.
go-to is not
Yeah.
available. It just doesn't happen that way,
Right,
cause you get so flooded
right.
with emotion. So I think, you know, we did try to get additional school psychologists this year. You may not know this, but we couldn't find 2 additional school psychologists. So that was part of the budget, and we couldn't do it. We were able to add an additional social worker in the district, but not school psychologists. So it gets, it's tricky when, even if you want the folks, you can't find them.
It
Next
also
year
brings,
they'll have more interns, which will be nice.
yeah. It also brings up a good point, for students, and parents, and teachers and stuff. Pay attention when the school committee talks about budget.
Yeah.
Really focus on it, and don't, you know, definitely advocate for these things and allow us to know, because I think last year, I know in the last year's budget process, we had most principals here, a lot of number of teachers, like the audience was filled, and they were advocating, we need more mental health staff, we need more psychologists, we need more these social workers, we need these things. And, you know, we tried to put in as many as we possibly could with the, you know, and still get the budget approved by the town council. So you know, it doesn't, go without saying, you know, don't be afraid to advocate, reach out to people, students as well. I mean, you guys are on the ground level too, and you see this stuff, and you know what's needed, and you can see these things. Don't be afraid to reach out to the school committee, or the superintendent, or anyone like that to advocate for change and to advocate for things like this, because sometimes they are tied to financial dollars. And then, you know, and then we have to carry it up the chain to the town council and get them on board as well. So I know it seems like it might be a little bit of a convoluted process, and in a lot of ways it is, but sometimes that's how, you know, the best change can happen, is just advocating fearlessly.
I was gonna say, first off, I'm sitting here listening to students. I would have never used these words in high school, like I'm triggered, I'm feeling this emotion, DBT. I mean, I learned that a couple years ago, being in the special educator director role and working with therapists. So like, hats off to you guys that you're there. I do hear what you guys are saying about wanting that access to that staff. I just feel like that's almost like two different pathways. Like, one is the kid in crisis, and how do we help the kid in crisis? Because I'm hoping there was no consequence that happened because you skipped class because you're in a crisis and couldn't get to a counselor.
No, I got talked about it. Just had like a talk.
Okay.
No consequence.
All right, so that makes me feel happy that there wasn't like some negative impact because now you
Yeah.
skipped class. Because I mean, I feel like one is, how can we be handling situations that are erupting in the class that end up as a conduct referral, that end up usually getting said issue. And listening to what you were saying though, like getting spoken to versus spoken at, I think there's the clarifying difference.
Yeah.
And there's, to me, in that moment, what is the teacher trying, to me, I'm like, what do I need you to do and get to, as opposed to what you did? We could talk about what you did later when we're both in a better place.
Yeah.
But I think sometimes we don't do that. We wanna do, this is what you did, and that type of behavior, as opposed to, I don't really care what you did right now. I do, I just don't need to do that right now. This is what I need you to do now, which is X, Y, Z, be safe, go to class, do whatever. We can circle back to, why did it happen? And now we're back to those triggers again to figure out that it doesn't happen again. So anyway, I just feel like those are two very different, in my mind, two different pathways that we need to cover.
And I think too, to echo, you said it earlier too, is that we know if people don't feel safe, they don't have a sense of belonging, and they don't feel as though they're in the best environment, they're gonna shut down already, and we're gonna see an increase of issues when we talk about discipline. So I think like when you look at like what is the foundation we want all students to feel, right? We want all students in the district to feel safe in their school. We want them to feel like they belong in their school, and want them to feel like they're heard. And I think when you meet those things, then building upon the procedures that when something does happen, you're able to repair, you're able to build upon that, and also look at what skills do we need to put in place to have this not happen again, right? But still make sure that student, even if, they did do something that wasn't necessarily good, but we're able to repair what has been done, right? And teach them a skill, teach yourself a skill, but also repair what's been done. And I think overall that sends out students who are able to, do better in the workplace. If they go to higher education, they're able to perform better in higher ed. But really it's about making sure our schools, when you look at, I'm reading the, just the discipline risk ratio, is like, how do we ensure that it becomes more equitable? So knowing our students all feel like they belong there, and I think that's huge.
I also, speaking as a teacher, I think, like, the teachers need help too, cause like currently we use email way too much, we don't have conversations, and even like RIDE's evaluation model is heinous, and it ties directly into the equity, because like currently the teacher's evaluation rubrics, which I've already talked to the commissioner of education about the old one, and the new person in charge of it, literally says students will, for like, to get us a 4, like, so when a student's misbehaving, it literally like, you get a bad evaluation from it using the tool properly, which is ridiculous, but RIDE clearly has on the table that a district can adopt whatever evaluation model they see best. So I really hope like North Kingstown like looks into that and switches the evaluation tool, because currently, like, it tortures the administration, it tortures the teachers, and then you have a lot of teachers on kind of like this emotional bent of like, oh my god, I'm gonna get a 2 because this student is sleeping in my class, or stuff like that, and then they're emailing administrators, and there's all these, then there's emails from parents about grades, and there's not a lot of conversations. And like Ride told me, every time I write my Andy Dufresne letter about how it needs to change, they keep telling me your district can adopt a new evaluation system, and that
That
might.
they have to approve, they didn't tell you that.
Yeah, but they did say that if you can make a legitimate evaluation model, cause like I talked about the observation one, and both of them in charge of Ride was like, oh, that sounds like something you could do, cause it definitely has a checks and balance system to it, and like, and that's a cost-effective way. It would give administrators more time to like roam around the building and observe. It would make the teachers observe each other more, and then get that rubric out of there, because right now that's definitely inequity, that like a student with behavioral problems, because literally like in some of the rubrics, like a 4 is that a student will chide other students for being off topic and get them back on task. I'm always like, what student is this? I don't even know. It's a ridiculous rubric.
I wanna pop on that one a little bit too, because it's completely unfair to students with special,
Yeah.
teachers with special needs, because
Yeah.
part of it is the student will turn and talk. Well, if
Yeah.
you have autism
Yeah, exactly.
or other significant disabilities, you're
Yeah.
just not going to automatically turn and talk.
Yeah.
It just doesn't happen.
Yeah.
I was part of a group that created a whole bunch of different
Yeah.
things for that rubric, for
Yeah.
students with special needs.
Yeah.
Spent weeks at Ride, and not one example was put into that
Yeah,
evaluation tool.
it's still, it's so raw, like what it does
It's
to
unfair.
kids and teachers is so,
And that might lead to the disruptive
Yeah,
student clause, because
exactly.
people don't, I get that.
yeah, cause I literally one time had a class, Success Academy, and I got a 2 for that day, and I was like, I'm celebrating that 2. They were the best I've ever seen them, and you're giving me a 2, whatever, you know, I was like, okay.
And to piggyback off that, I'm always in a pickle, because as an administrator who does evaluations, I try to be very, specific to the rubric. But if I am specific to the rubric so that they know I'm not being subjective in my evaluation, what constitutes a 3 versus a 4 is how much student involvement is there, like every single category. The students led the discussion as the 4, or the teacher primarily. They could have a killer plan, lesson plan, and execute it fantastic, but if I don't have that evidence of, X, Y, and Z, or when it says virtually all students are X, Y, and Z constitutes a 4, well, on certain level classes, I might not necessarily see that, but the teacher is crushing the lesson and doing a fantastic job, so I agree that really kind of puts us in a little bit of a bind. Whereas there are different types of evaluations, for example, like maybe a school counselor's evaluation, or other professionals in the building, where it's much more open-ended, where you can kind of create a narrative around it. And to me, I almost wish I could have something like that for our teachers too, because you can paint a much clearer picture. I don't know where the balance is, but I definitely resonate on that pickle, and I see it, in an AP level course, for example, I'm going to see often mostly 4s on the teacher's end, because the students are driving that. They're already prepared to. They
Right.
know how to, they feel comfortable having conversations with their peers, or driving, their peers to understand the content further, whereas some of our kiddos might not have those skills yet, and so they don't even know where to start, and that teacher is beginning to teach them how to do that, and any little, I could talk about that forever, but I agree, in short.
No, and I think that's why we're here.
Yeah.
We can look at, evaluation matrices, and I definitely think that, we can ask for the school committee's support on this, and ask for their advocacy to Ride on behalf of recommendations that this committee can make. So I definitely think that's within the realm of possibility, and things that we should.
And I think it also
Right.
ties in with transparency, like get students to see teachers' point of views and get teachers to see students' point of views, because right now we are in this locked step where we don't see each other's point of view, and we just end up not happy.
Right.
I think one thing that Mr. Propertier does that none of my other teachers do are, like, a few times a quarter, like, having interviews, like, one-on-one with the teacher, talking about, like, how are you moving forward in, like, a certain assignment or project, and if you have any questions on anything, or even just like, do you have any questions on past like assessments, projects, assignments that like you want clarification on? Because I know like I've definitely seen in my time like grades coming through and you being like, I worked like really hard on that and I got a bad grade, like just kind of seeing eye to eye on like what went wrong and like what you could do better to fix it.
I think it's difficult to have a conversation on only discipline here. I've been worried about it ever since coming through this meeting without talking about things like assessment and fair and equitable assessment, without talking about things like, you know, if we're talking about a sense of belonging, having an adult that works there that you see yourself in, like I'm looking at, you know, these suspension African American or Black students have 7.19 times, you know, multiracial 8.43, 300 lunch, so like poverty, like just, you know, the hiring practices of, you know, who's working there, who they feel comfortable with, really looking into, of course, the practices in general, but then, you know, so we'll see where what they all are right now, which I don't know the past system. I don't know a lot about the systems, but we know that these groups are being disproportionately impacted, and so I think changing the whole system is one thing, but I also want to look at why are the ones now disproportionately affecting these students too.
That's what I was gonna say too, so I'm glad you said that. I just wanna circle back to, I think we have to, I mean, we can maybe brainstorm the possible whys. So yeah, we probably, you know, what I do like what I'm hearing is, we didn't talk a lot about like what happens if this behavior and that behavior, even though that will need to be defined at, we talked about supporting the children on all levels. But then I wanted, like in the back of my head, why are these numbers like this? Like what's the why behind it? And it's not gonna be one, we're gonna have to get the onion and peel back the onion and try to really understand why to change all of our practices, on several, or seek more supports within the community, you know, and helping, but, so thank you for saying that. I wrote that down so I didn't forget.
It's actually a good segue to the next point of the agenda, the types of data that we think we might look at. Obviously, I know Jen had to leave, but, you know, she mentioned that when you read the equity report, there is data in there already that they gave them. So that's kind of like a starting point, I think, that we could look at. And I think, you know, I would encourage you all to look at this data, but also, you know, let the subcommittee know these points are, what's missing out of this data? Are there other things that we might be able to get access? Now, obviously, it's.
What does the data look like? Does it just say?
Yeah.
I'm just saying, cause when I did this at another district and when you use Aspen, you can have your search engines and your pie charts and everything, so it was like disciplined by the conduct, disciplined by the teacher, disciplined by the student, disciplined by, so you can keep maneuvering the categories around so that it shows you, geez, 75% of our discipline came from 4 teachers, okay? That's very different than 75% came from 1 student working with 12 different teachers, okay, we're gonna focus on the kids. So there's different things in how we can look at it, as just saying, we had 127 conduct referrals for insubordination and 6 suspensions. Like, that doesn't tell me more, as if I could deep dive further on, well, what age of the classroom is it, what program was he in, what teacher did they do it, you know, they're all on the same team, okay, what's the issue there, is the dynamic, so I'm just saying, those are, when I look at that, I wanna like really hold it down.
I don't think they did a lot of analysis of the reasons why.
Well, I'm a big
We're
why.
just looking at like,
Right.
oh, I know, and I know I could take some really good guesses as to the why, but it doesn't really analyze it that way. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Is the why put into the system currently?
no, it wouldn't be.
So,
But to Joe's point, we're looking at data that might not be telling the accurate story,
Right.
because, for instance, if it's from the same 5 teachers, you know, with the same kids, it's data that's important, but without being able to go down to that level lens, it's hard to determine.
Well, yeah, I'm just saying, like, when I broke it down
We
by.
do it by location and
by
everything,
kid,
like,
location,
where is
whatever,
it
and I was like,
happening, you know, we do that at the school level,
yes,
but.
this one student got 27 write-ups this year, okay, was it by 12 different teachers? Okay, that, well, then they're having an
Or was it
issue.
by one teacher?
Or
Was it
was
by
it
one teacher?
25 out of the 27, one teacher? Okay, well, now we have, that. Then that's what I'm saying, that specific data now, that kid's getting more referrals by that one teacher, so they're gonna have more consequences leading to, well, this is the 5th time this week we had to come to the office. And we just keep amping up. I've just been down that road where, okay, if we didn't look at those things, when I'm in the school, I don't need that data because I'm living it. But I'm saying
And
to me
then
on the
data,
outside.
data, like I always say all the time, data is really good, important questions, because then it's nuanced. Like you might literally have a student who's doing something wrong, and one teacher is still like reporting it because they're supposed to, you know, via the, and there might be 3 other teachers who agree but stopped reporting it, you know, like, so that happens too sometimes, because I remember one time I had a student who refused to use an electronic device just because they didn't like it, and then the parent and guardian was like, you're the only teacher that has a problem with that. I'm like, and then I talked to the other teachers and they're like, yeah, I have a huge problem with it, but I don't feel comfortable saying anything. I'm like, great, so that looks good. Like, so I'm just throwing under the bus because I'm the only person who has a problem with a child in the technology CTE program who refuses to use a Chromebook, and I'm the only one saying something. So like, I was just sitting there like, okay, like all the teachers on the QT told me I was right, but then when I said, why didn't you having a problem with it, like, well, I don't want the parent attacking me. I was like, okay. So that's what happens sometimes with this data is like, so like if one teacher is reporting, we all have to do a dive of like, you know, what was the student doing, you know, did the other teachers just ignore it, so.
Well, if we look at, I mean, just if we try and simplify to just what we have, I mean, the students disproportionately impacted are by race, gender, socioeconomic status, and ability. So we know, we have an answer to the question, who are the students, right? And we have an answer to the question, what are our practices? So we just have to like, I guess, look at what parts of each practice, where is there room for bias, where is there room for, you know, these disproportionalities to occur.
And is it happening at a particular location?
Sure, yeah,
You know,
where is
and-
it happening more, yeah, so on. I
I'd
mean,
love
it's
to-
not like these are way off of the mark of the trends that we see in public education.
Nationwide.
Exactly, so it's not, I'm not shocked, you know, but it's it's something that, you know, everybody has to deal with, and here, obviously,
Right.
it is a problem, and
It's probably less than the state average also.
that'd be something
I'd love
interesting
to
to
be-
look at.
I'd be interested
if we
to
could
know
look
that,
at
but I,
Yeah.
some of the numbers sounded like they were less than what I've saw, but.
So statewide and nationwide comparisons.
Mhm.
Also, just to throw in the mix, when I'm looking at kind of the specific groups that we're illuminating in the data, what systems have we had or could we have to support the families? Because, so for example, if I'm seeing like a low socioeconomic or an ability category, in what ways can the school support those families? Because I'm sure that as soon as the kiddo leaves the school day, you know, there's a lot of challenges at home that maybe they're not getting the same support as some of our kiddos that aren't struggling in the same way or going home in the same circumstances, or, you know, the myriad of different needs depending on ability. You know, the spectrum is so wide, but what is the family support that we can provide? I know we've talked about translators and being transparent, but, you know, if we're trying to reverse, we know that, I think we collectively know that every behavior is a symptom of something much deeper, and, you know, we can do our best to reverse that behavior in the school day, but if the majority of their life, it's being reinforced at home, where that family could need a little extra support, you know, how do we, I don't know what the answer is, but I would love to know the answer, you know? I'd love to know.
Also, like, simple little things like equity of assignments, because like if you have a student who has to go home and take care of their siblings,
Right,
that's a lot different than someone going home to play Xbox. And if you have another child who's going home to work a job that's going towards the household
right.
mean, that is much different than a student going home to work a job to buy a new cell phone. Like, so all those things Like, so when you're assigning work to a student, it'd be nice if those discussions were happening, cause maybe like we'd have to re-examine the rigor, not based on your proficiency in testing, but maybe socioeconomic, like, you know, like you're teaching this student and like for equity, not like right now we're too unequal, like, okay, that's unequal for my students because this student has this homework and this student doesn't have any. It's like, well, we're going for equity here, like this student has free time, this student doesn't, so, you know.
And they're more likely to skip class and they don't have
Yeah.
homework.
Yeah, cause that's
I know I
like
was.
when they're going to, and then it actually quadruples in nuance, because then if the teacher's supposed to do a group exercise to get that 4, now the student hasn't done their homework and they can't participate in the group, so then they're gonna feel embarrassed, so then they might skip the class, so that's how it's all related.
It's a, but I hear you, right, but the equity piece is, giving them access.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So it is, so it wouldn't be taken away, it would give them opportunity to complete it at another time
yeah,
during
exactly.
the school day so they
Yeah.
can be successful.
Yeah.
Right, so it's.
Which leads to our grading system, which was part of meeting
Yeah,
yes
this is what we
earlier today.
Yeah, right,
Yes.
but it's,
Right,
but
so
when,
Whole thing.
whole
the
thing.
whole thing is why I don't think homework should be zeros or whatever, because.
Absolutely.
If it's that important and you're gonna give them a 0, they still need to do it because they missed out on the learning.
Right, like what's our goal, proficiency or yeah.
Yeah.
But I also think like, this goes back to the training, like I think, and myself included, we all find ourselves in this frequently, but we have assumptions we don't even realize that we have. So as an example, during COVID, and I wasn't in this district at this time, so a long time ago, but something that sticks with me is I had some kiddos sitting at a table privately with their headphones and nice, and then I had one of my students, when I asked them all to turn on their video, and she was under a bed, and I could see like chaos ensuing behind her, and when I reached out one-on-one with the student, I said, why are you under a bed? She said it was the only place in my house I could go where I can actually focus.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, we can't even assume that somebody has a table to sit at. You know, so I think that these, to your point, there's so many branches when it comes to what's causing the discipline that we will need to
It's
explore.
a really daunting task.
Yeah,
It's a huge task, yeah.
it
And
is.
now I'm depressed and overwhelmed.
I'm sorry.
Sorry.
No,
Well,
it's a
But
good
it's
point.
true.
How do you not lower
Start someplace.
without lowering the standards, keep the standard up here, it's a huge
Yeah.
task, because you know, it's that word, you know, sympathy, kids don't need sympathy, they need empathy, sympathy
Mhm.
actually lowers the bar, and if you think of
Right.
it that way, but it is hard and it's daunting.
Well, the good news is like Martin Luther King taught us, is all you do is have a solution that helps, and you just move forward. You're never gonna find the answer, it's always and. It's not or, it's not
Thank you
but,
for
it's and. So it's like, let's try this, and that, and
And
this.
this.
And then if it helps one kid out of 30, then it's a victory,
And
and if it's never gonna solve anything, and I think that's the philosophy that our district has struggled with, is they're always trying to find the best new solution, the new curriculum, the new this, the new solution.
answer
And
to
then,
an
and
unanswerable.
then when it doesn't work, they're like, they don't examine that it worked a little, they just go boop, and then move on,
Yeah.
when and should be the philosophy.
Mm.
Cause then it's more positive, then you can like, if you helped one kid, you know, by Jefferson's ideal with the public education, that's a good thing. Like, that's what education is supposed to do, if you helped one kid, it's good.
And,
But we
and
wanna help
I,
them all.
I also know, and I know the kind of the title of this committee is temporary subcommittee. I don't think it's as temporary as we think it's gonna be. I know it has to be renewed annually by the school committee, and I don't think that will be a problem, because as Jen and Dr. Santa and other people have expressed, it is a huge daunting process and subject to look at. So, I don't think that this is gonna be like a one and done and here's our paper kind of thing. I think that this could go on for a while, but I
the
think
real work
it's,
is gonna happen after we identify what we need.
Right.
Because that's the hard part, is
Right.
then implementing,
exactly.
if we can identify
Exactly.
public causes.
But, you know, it sounds like we need some, I love pivot tables. I love, that's what I do all day long at work, and getting that data and crunching it in several different formats in several different ways to kind of get to the root cause of something. It's literally what I do all day long at work. So I think, you know, if we can get that data and, you know, we can ask Mike Waterman for downloads if we need them and other things like that. But I would highly suggest everyone, you know, just quickly look at the discipline sections in the equity audit if you haven't already and see where it goes. And if you have suggestions, again, please let Dr. Santa and myself know. And, you know, and then we can come up with, future agenda items for things to look at, for people to look at, so. Any other comments, questions?
I hope I captured this well. That's all. I tried.
I'm sure you did an amazing job. Yep.
I just have one thing to say, mainly pointed towards Mr. Oki. Going off of what Lucia said a while back, the girls' bathroom, I don't know about the boys' bathroom, but the girls' bathroom is a nightmare.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
words written on the wall,
Yes.
mainly like the words, but like there's like
drawings.
drawings. It is
So all the
uncomfortable.
time, like,
Yeah.
it's just
I've heard
It's
from,
disgusting. And it is like I just came to use the bathroom in peace. I don't wanna look
Yeah.
at that and like feel like down and depressed about myself because
Yeah.
of what someone else wrote on the bathroom thinking it was a joke, but then like there's other people that are triggered by it.
Mhm.
It's like it's a real issue, and I know we've tried to address it, but like incoming freshmen,
Mm.
that them coming in and seeing like that's the norm of what a girl's bathroom in high school looks like that's just disgusting in my opinion.
We,
Is it in the
we
boys'
agree with
bathroom
you.
or in the
I've
men's
heard
bathroom?
from some of my friends that the boys' bathroom is like horrendous. Like it is like it's like
tried to do it.
vandalized and there's
Vandal-
broken
yeah.
mirrors
Yeah.
and it's like really bad.
Yeah.
And so it's
My
just
daughter
like-
would agree with you.
Also.
I know.
Yeah.
She literally comes home every day, and the first thing she does, she runs to the bathroom because she refuses to go to the bathroom
Yeah.
at school.
This is
So.
something that's been a very hot topic at,
Yep.
so our admin comes together once a week to talk about like the most pertinent issues in the building, and this has been at the top of the list for the last few weeks since these lists, and it's definitely gone up, and our, you know, custodial staff and admin have kind of been working in tandem, and just in full transparency, what we've been doing in the now is we just sent out a notification to teachers, so there are certain times in the day where administrators oversee the bathrooms, and typically those are like, you've seen us like at advisory or in the mornings, right? The rest of the day it's our teachers, and we've been all kind of coming together to go in and do a sweep, you know, every time somebody changes post, if you will, so that way we can condense the time frame, because watching a camera for a time frame is for like an 80-hour block, right? And then that way we can see, okay, well at this time it wasn't there, but at this time it was, so sometime between then and now we're doing a dive to kind of call students in as we see who were in there during that time. It's newer that we've been getting that intensive, but it's to respond to both of these things. We're in agreement with you fully. And any other measures that you as a student body feel and think of, feel free to let us know, because we certainly would love the feedback.
Can I share something?
Yes.
So at my old district, our maintenance crew was hired by the district. And we, for what you were saying earlier, like for the restorative piece, students who needed to give back to the community because they somehow like tore the community down or the classroom down, would have to clean things. Like they would have to go into the bathroom and not scrub toilets, but they would erase things on the wall, or they would, you know, if somebody drew on the outside of the building, they would have to try and erase it with the custodial staff during one of their preferred activity times of the day.
What school was that?
It was at the Compass School.
So I think, I don't know exactly what it is, maybe as a team we can look into it, but in my former district, we had discussions about in the public schools, I think there's like legality issues against that, but I don't know what they are.
It was a it was a publicly funded.
Yeah.
School.
Parent permission, you can, when I
Yeah,
was
you
in my last
definitely need
district.
parent
you?
involvement.
Yep.
I had elementary kids clean the bath, with parents' permission, and they knew and they agreed, and
Okay, yeah.
Yep.
And
They
some-
said it fell under child labor, but
Well-
that's not saying that's what
Right,
happened, because I
sure.
think it's a great idea.
it's like everything else, it's how it's presented.
Yes,
It's like,
yes,
The-
yes.
it was
catching
part
us
of
up
the
in trouble.
MTSS,
Yeah.
so the social
Yes.
emotional.
everybody's in agreement, it's a plan.
Yeah, it was a
And then,
plan that was built
Imagine
by.
being a parent.
It's
yeah.
how it's delivered probably.
Where it's like we
And I
suspect
think that's
something
definitely,
not
you know, like I said,
That's the,
bring back what other districts are doing.
yeah,
Let us
I
know
love
and let
the
us look
idea.
at it, so that's definitely things that we can look
Mhm.
at, so. But I think, you know, after you've had a chance to look at the data and the information in the equity audit, again, please feel free to let myself and Dr. Santino, and we can obviously reach out to Mike Waterman and other people in the administration to ask for this data and how we see the data. And if you see that there's maybe a data point that, oh, it'd be nice to have that, does it even exist? Because I think that that's something that, and maybe that's another place we need to start with Mike Waterman, is what exists in the system? What does?
There's
and-
other systems too,
Yeah,
like
and
we have all
that-
sorts of e-ride systems that we have to report to too,
Right.
so that Mike might not be aware of.
Right,
But if you figure out the data, we can try to figure out where we can gather it
right.
between the group of us.
So this equity report was 2022, so the high school students, because I don't think we have any elementary or middle school students. Do you think since 2022 it's gotten any better or any worse? Like, what would you phrase it as overall?
I think as freshmen coming in, it was just like a whole new world. Hearing from my sister, who is now in college, her like hearing stories about during like Spirit Week how like objects were thrown at her, like as incoming freshmen walking out to the stadium, like hearing like I don't have to like worry about that. That was like comforting, knowing that like I'm not going to be harassed just because I'm coming into a new school. But then just over time it got worse and worse, and like I've seen like videos of fights where like the teacher just has their back turned for what seems to look like a really long time until they intervened. And knowing those students who had like different needs than like me or Dylan or Lucia or whoever, like knowing they needed a little bit more, and seeing that like that teacher just like kind of put a wall until it like got really physically violent and didn't like
I
intervene.
don't have any older siblings, so like I can't speak like, oh, my sister told me this, my brother told me this, but like I definitely expected something different. Like I'm told that I'm very mature for my age, and like the behavior from girls in my grade right now, like it's not, like I hold myself at a higher standard than that. Like I wouldn't go into the bathroom and write things about like woman to woman. Like I just feel like it's so ridiculous, honestly, and I expect so much better from them, but they just disappoint every time.
So the question I might have is, if you guys know who it is anonymously, and I say that, so that it doesn't put you in a position, because I look at it as saying all behavior is a form of communication. So what is going on with that girl who's writing in this bathroom? What's she saying? What is her mental state? Is she being sexually abused? I mean, like, I don't know what's being written, so obviously I'm taking it out of context, but to me, that person's putting it up there to gain attention, avoid something. What is the, so that's what I'm saying. If as a community, I am not in your building, nor am I a 16-year-old high school female student going to that bathroom, so I don't know what you're feeling. But there's probably an underlying thing that's happening that could also be addressed,
That is
or needs to be
exactly
addressed.
my thought. Like, how can I help her? Like, why does she feel the need to do this? Like, how can I help her?
What is she trying to gain?
Where's it coming from?
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
She's getting something out of it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And it's not really attention to some degree because no one knows who it is, so it's not like and I'm just saying it's a projecting outward of something.
It's triggering me because it starts in the elementary school. I'll say that and we'll end it there because it's such a girl thing and I don't understand it. And I know I'm an old lady now, but I never could understand it. It's been
Writing on
forever
the
happening.
bathroom in a school
And
just goes back to.
I don't know what it
It'll never
is.
go away.
I don't know, it's not going away and it happens.
I'd also like to say one more thing bouncing off you, like just I've seen a lot of instances where there was like bullying that just has not been addressed, or it has been addressed but it hasn't been addressed properly, or like the teacher hasn't been intervened. And I think just a perspective is that when there's bullying and the teachers see it, that's probably not the first time. And it's probably not the first offense. It's just the first offense that has been up to that point that it needs to be, that it was seen by a teacher. there's probably been microaggressions or something outside of school or cyberbullying or something that was the first offense that needed to be addressed then, but the student didn't feel like they could like come forward, or it wasn't like obvious enough or something like that. And just, I've seen cases where like, that it was like addressed, but they're like, oh, this is only the first offense, so we can't really do anything serious. But like, the situation itself was serious and there needs to be reprimand, and that didn't happen. So, discipline in itself, yes, the student needs to be like talked to, and there needs to be communication and transparency, and just like having, problem solving with the students, but also there needs to be, I wouldn't say justice, but I don't know any other word for it right now. Just like,
the student needs to come to an understanding that that can't happen
yeah,
again.
so there can't just be like, and also when a student does something and it's the first offense, usually once that student realizes they're being detected by teachers, they try and put it on the down low again. They're not gonna have a second offense for a while, probably. And so, and like that kid's gonna be probably being keep bullied on the down low, and the student can't feel like they'll like come forward with it because they feel like it's not gonna come to anything, because it hadn't when it was like a first offense. So it's just stuff like that, where it's, I wouldn't say the teachers are only looking at their perspective, but it's very black and white and just.
I think that would be interesting to see if there, how much qualitative data there is about disciplinary situations. Is there extenuating circumstances? Like you said, may start somewhere else and may be a microaggression that works its way in and becomes something much larger, and doesn't have, it all kind of ties together. Everything that we have said here tonight, it all ties together, and I think that's why it does seem like a daunting task, but if we can.
Yeah, because now she mentioned bullying, right, that's another whole committee
That's
itself.
another whole,
What does it look like,
Obviously,
how's
it's like
it
another
defined,
conversation
right?
for
Yeah,
another
right.
day, but
But
I just wanted to
right.
bring it up
You need
before.
to feel safe when you go to school,
Right.
emotionally, physically, and it just needs to know that it's not, you're saying justice, but not tolerated, but how do we get that message across?
Yeah.
Right. Does anybody have anything else they want to share? Or does anyone want to make a motion to adjourn?
When do we meet again? I forget.
Dr. Sant and I will come up, I think it would be great if we can come up with like a regular meeting
I would like, if we
time.
could keep it like on a Monday, it seems to be Monday was the best day for most people. That way it's consistent for
Like
all
the
of us.
first Monday of every month or something.
Yeah,
Something
we
like
can-
that.
yeah,
We'll look at that type
something-
of
we can
schedule. We have
look
to
at
just
that.
make sure this room is available, so there's a
Yeah,
couple of
that's-
things we have to figure out.
Yep.
Yeah, something like that, so it's predictable.
Yeah.
I know
So-
I need that.
We'll reach
In my
out soon
calendar.
with some, next dates and potential dates and stuff like that. Right, is there a motion to adjourn?
So
Second? All those in favor? Aye. All right, thank you very much, I appreciate it. Thank you so much to the students and everyone. We will be in touch shortly. Thank you.
Nice meeting everyone. Nice meeting, nice seeing you.
Thank you.